It's a pleasure to have you on our channel. We'd love to know where you're watching from. Let us know in the comments. Ariana never imagined her life would change on an ordinary morning, but something in the air felt both heavier and lighter at the same time. The sky had that peculiar quality of early autumn, where the light seems to carry memory and promise in equal measure. She had woken that day with an inexplicable restlessness, a feeling that lingered in her chest like a question she couldn't articulate. She followed her routine as always, the same walk through the familiar streets, the same order of chai latte, the same polite smile for the barista who knew her name. With a silent longing she rarely admitted, even to herself. Her days were predictable, safe in their repetition, but her heart was restless, yearning for something she couldn't name. It wasn't exactly dissatisfaction, but rather a whisper that something more awaited beyond the comfortable boundaries she had built around her life. And then she saw him standing near the cafe window. The light illuminated his contours, transforming him into something ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. Something stopped within her. Her breath caught between one heartbeat and the next, as if she recognized a story she hadn't yet lived, but somehow remembered. Luca's presence wasn't noisy. It was the kind of stillness that effortlessly rearranged everything around him. He stood with one hand in his pocket, the other holding a cup he seemed to have forgotten, his gaze fixed on something beyond the cup. Perhaps the street, perhaps nothing. Ariana found herself watching him with a curiosity that didn't seem intrusive, but instinctive, as if her soul bowed before her body, drawn by an invisible thread she couldn't see but definitely felt. His expression had a gentleness she rarely saw in strangers, but beneath it lay a shadow she couldn't define. She felt drawn to him in a silent, undeniable way. The kind of attraction that defies logic and speaks directly to something older than thought. They hadn't exchanged a word, hadn't even acknowledged each other's existence, but something had already begun. A silent dialogue unfolding in the space between them, written in glances yet to be exchanged, and words yet to be spoken. He looked up, and their eyes met for a brief instant. An instant long enough for Ariana to feel something shift within her, like a key, turning in a lock she didn't even know existed. It wasn't just attraction, though that was there too, undeniable and immediate. It was recognition, the feeling that his presence touched a place she thought inaccessible, a part of herself she kept hidden even from her own consciousness. Luca blinked slowly, almost as if recognizing her without saying a word. Ariana felt a shiver of knowing she didn't understand, a certainty without proof, a truth her body recognized before her mind could follow. Whatever it was, this magnetic attraction, this sudden awareness of the existence of another soul in the world, she felt it deeply, instantly, as if remembering something she had never experienced before. And if she had known where that single glance would lead her, perhaps she would have looked away, but she didn't look away. Instead, she lingered in the moment, letting herself feel the unknown warmth growing inside her, spreading through her chest like the sunrise breaking through a dark horizon. It was both stimulating and unsettling, this sudden awareness of possibility, this crack in the carefully constructed armor of her everyday existence. The world around her continued its relentless movement, oblivious to the silent conversation unfolding between two strangers. People hurried past with their urgent tasks. Cars buzzed down the street. The barista called out names. Life persisted in its beautiful and carefree way. But for Ariana, time had developed a strange elasticity, stretching that single moment into something greater than itself. Ariana wondered why her breathing felt different, short and rapid as if she had been running, why her heart reacted to a presence she didn't recognize with such immediate intensity. She had met people before, countless faces in countless days, hundreds of strangers who had passed through her life leaving almost no trace. But none had disturbed her with such subtle force. None had reached her inside and touched something she didn't know was waiting to be touched. As she walked away, her legs moving mechanically while her mind remained elsewhere, she found herself looking back, searching for him again without admitting it aloud, her neck turning almost involuntarily as if pulled by that same invisible thread. Luca remained by the window, oblivious to the wave he had caused in her, still lost in his own thoughts. Ariana didn't know his name, his story, or the weight he carried. She didn't know if he was kind or cruel, available or committed, a blessing or a lesson, but these details seemed irrelevant in the face of what she had felt. She only sensed that something inevitable had begun, that she had come across a door she could no longer ignore, and that crossing it would require more courage than she knew she possessed. And the universe, patient as always, awaited her next move, knowing it would change everything. Because sometimes, one glance is enough to awaken a story destiny has been preparing for years. If this story is resonating with you, remember to like and subscribe so more people can join us on this journey. Every interaction helps this story reach the hearts that need it. In the days that followed, Ariana found herself remembering Luca in moments of tranquility, as if his presence had carved a small, tender space within her that nothing else could fill. His image would appear unexpectedly, uninvited but not unwanted, interrupting her thoughts with the clarity of something already deeply rooted. She didn't understand why a stranger lingered in her thoughts with such tenderness, why someone she barely knew occupied the spaces between her daily tasks with such silent persistence. It wasn't urgency or despair, it was something calmer, more patient, like a tide rising without permission, constant, inevitable, and completely beyond her control. She feared calm because chaos had always been easier to name, easier to explain. Chaos demanded nothing of her but reaction. Calm demanded trust. However, a part of her, a small, courageous part she had carefully protected, wondered what it meant to feel safe in someone's memory, to carry another person with her not as a burden, but as a comfort, a gentle presence that made the world a little less lonely. The next encounter seemed almost scripted by something greater than chance, as if an invisible hand had orchestrated their paths to cross again at the exact moment. She had returned to the same cafe, telling herself it was merely convenient, though her heart knew otherwise. And there he was, as if they were both following a map only their souls could decipher. Luca greeted her with a gentle smile that didn't try to impress or feign, but seemed genuinely happy to see her, his eyes shining with a recognition that made her feel vulnerable and valued at the same time. Ariana felt her shoulders relax, the tension she didn't even know she carried dissipating in his presence. A reaction she hadn't expected and couldn't explain. He asked about her day with an attention that surprised her, because he wasn't distracted or inattentive. His interest seemed real, solid, and gentle, qualities she wasn't used to receiving from anyone, much less someone she barely knew. And that gentleness made her pulse quicken. As they talked, Ariana noticed how Luca listened to her, attentively, without rushing to fill the silence, without needing to be the center of attention or the solution to all problems. He gave space for her words to land, breathe, have importance. She found herself sharing parts of her life that she rarely revealed to anyone. Her unfinished dreams, her silent disappointments, the small fears that seemed too banal to be spoken aloud, but which, somehow, defined the boundaries of her world. There was no judgment in his eyes, no hidden intention she could detect, no sense that he was cataloging her vulnerabilities to use them against her later. His gaze showed only curiosity and something that seemed genuine care. And yet, there was something he didn't say, something hidden behind the sweetness of his voice, like a weight he had grown accustomed to carrying, a heavy stillness she couldn't decipher, but felt. And if she had asked the right question that day, if she had pushed past her own hesitation and his careful deflection, everything would have unfolded differently. But she didn't ask. Instead, she let the moment exist as it was, simple and unexpectedly comforting. Luca asked about her dreams, her fears, and the things that made her feel alive. He wanted to know which books transported her, which songs moved her, which moments of her daily life seemed secretly sacred. Ariana felt seen in a way she had long forgotten was possible. She wondered why being understood scared her more than being ignored, why visibility seemed more dangerous than invisibility, perhaps because understanding requires truth, and truth always comes at a price. As they said goodbye, Luca's farewell carried a gentleness that stayed with her long after he was gone, his words echoing in her mind like a song she couldn't forget. The way he briefly, gently, touched her arm in parting, Ariana sensed that this connection wasn't casual or accidental. It seemed intentional, almost meaningful, as if they had been destined for each other by forces neither of them controlled or fully understood. What she couldn't see was the invisible thread that bound their stories together long before they met. Because sometimes love doesn't come to comfort. It comes to reveal, to dispel illusions, to show us truths about ourselves that we have been avoiding. And Ariana was only beginning to understand that the unfamiliar gentleness she felt was the first sign of a truth waiting in the shadows. Ariana soon noticed a strange contrast growing within her. Whenever Luca was around, the world seemed softer, almost easier to breathe, as if his presence created an oasis of calm amidst the constant noise of her anxious thoughts. But beneath that superficial comfort, an old unease awoke, familiar and unwanted, reminding her of old wounds that never fully healed. She didn't distrust Luca. She distrusted the way he made her feel safe, the ease with which he dismantled the defenses she had taken years to build. Safety seemed like uncharted territory, a place she feared would crumble the moment she leaned on it. Her heart kept asking if she deserved something so kind, if accepting it would somehow bring about catastrophe, as if happiness were a debt that would eventually demand payment. Luca never pressed for more than she could offer, never demanded explanations for his sudden silences or for the moments when she seemed to take refuge behind invisible walls. His calmness wasn't passive or indifferent. It was attentive, constant, and quietly comforting, like a lighthouse that simply exists without needing recognition. Ariana didn't know how to receive this kind of presence without expecting the moment it would disappear. Part of her believed he would eventually show the same indifference she had learned to expect, that his patience was finite, and that she would eventually exhaust it with her complications and fears. But each time she prepared for disappointment, building walls and rehearsing farewells in her mind, Luca surprised her by simply staying, as if leaving had never been an option, as if she were worth the effort of staying. The more comfortable she felt, the more frightened she became, trapped in a paradox she couldn't explain to anyone, least of all herself. Love had always been a battlefield for her, a place where she fought for crumbs of affection, where she had learned to diminish herself to deserve the little she received. But with Luca, there was no war to win, no walls to climb, no games to decipher, no tests to pass. His firmness exposed wounds she thought were hidden, and this vulnerability scared her more than any romantic disappointment. She couldn't understand why someone like him saw her so clearly, why he didn't seem bothered by her confusing and complicated parts, and if she had known that Luca's calm came from a painful place he never spoke about, her fear would have taken another shape entirely. So, Ariana tried to suppress her feelings, convincing herself that what she felt wasn't as deep as it seemed. She told herself stories to create distance, to protect herself from the vulnerability of wanting something so badly. But emotions have a way of revealing themselves, despite our efforts. Each conversation with Luca added another thread to the growing connection between them, weaving something she couldn't unravel, even if she wanted to. She noticed how he paid attention to details that others ignored, her silence when she was overwhelmed, her small joys when something enchanted her, her unspoken worries. It was as if he understood her in ways she wasn't prepared to be understood, as if he could read her body language and her pauses better than anyone else ever had. Still, she sensed a distance in him at certain moments, a subtle but unmistakable shift, a shadow crossing his expression when he thought she wasn't looking. She couldn't decipher it, but it persisted like smoke, suggesting a story behind his gentleness, reasons for his patience that had nothing to do with her. Ariana wondered if she would have the courage to discover what lay beneath his calm exterior, if she would be strong enough to bear whatever truth he carried. Because love, even the purest kind, often comes wrapped in truths that change everything, revelations that transform the landscape of what seemed simple and beautiful into something far more complex. And as her heart leaned closer to him, the truth waited patiently, knowing she would one day face it. If this story has been speaking to your heart, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Your support allows this journey to continue and reach more people who need it. There were moments when Luca's eyes carried a distant weight, a shadow that appeared without warning and vanished just as quickly, like clouds passing over the sun. Ariana noticed it the way one notices a shift in the wind, subtle but undeniable, a change in atmospheric pressure that her body registered before her mind could name it. They would be mid-conversation, talking about something ordinary like the book he was reading or the rain that had been forecast for the weekend. And suddenly his gaze would drift away from her, focusing on something invisible that only he could see. He would fall silent for a few seconds, maybe 5 or 10, though they felt much longer in the space between them, as if remembering something he wished he could forget, as if a door in his mind had opened without his permission, and he was helplessly pulled through it. His smile would return, gentle as always, reassuring in its familiarity, but softened by a quiet ache beneath it, that she could sense even if she couldn't fully understand. In those moments, Ariana felt the presence of a truth he kept hidden, something heavy and carefully guarded that lived behind his eyes like a secret he'd sworn never to tell. She didn't ask about it, not because she didn't care. Her curiosity was fierce and constant, a living thing that grew stronger each time she witnessed these moments, but because she sensed the fragility of whatever he held inside, understood instinctively that pressing too hard might shatter something precious between them. Some stories reveal themselves only when the heart feels safe enough, when trust has been built brick by careful brick, and she didn't want to force his into the light before he was ready to show it. She had learned that lesson the hard way in her own life, knew what it felt like to have someone demand access to wounds that were still too raw to expose. Still, curiosity lingered in her chest like a persistent melody, whispering questions she tried to silence but couldn't quite ignore. What had shaped Luca into someone so tender, yet so guarded, so generous with his attention but so careful with his own story? What had taught him to listen so deeply, to hold space for others with such grace, but reveal so little about himself? What pain had formed him into this paradox of openness and concealment? Ariana began noticing patterns, small consistent threads that wove through their interactions like a code she was beginning to decipher. The way he flinched, almost imperceptibly, at certain topics, anything involving betrayal or broken trust. His body tensing as if bracing for impact. The rare times his voice trembled, catching on words that seemed innocuous but clearly touched something tender within him. The guarded expression he wore, carefully neutral but unmistakably defensive, when she mentioned her family, her mother's upcoming visit, her brother's recent call, the simple, ordinary connections that formed the scaffolding of her life. It wasn't disinterest or judgment. She knew him well enough by now to recognize that. It was caution, a wariness that suggested her world touched a wound he wasn't ready to name, that the ordinary infrastructure of family represented something complicated and painful in his own history. She sensed that their stories were somehow connected, though she didn't yet understand how one couldn't see the invisible threads that linked her past to his in ways that would eventually become devastatingly clear. And that unspoken connection created a tension she couldn't ignore, a gravitational pull between what she knew and what she suspected, between the man she was falling for and the mystery he embodied. If she had followed that intuition then, if she had trusted the quiet voice inside her that whispered something wasn't adding up, she would have discovered the truth long before it broke her heart. But instead, she chose to trust the moment rather than the mystery, to believe in what she could see and feel, rather than in the shadows she couldn't quite name. Luca offered her the kind of gentle presence she had never known, patient, consistent, deeply attentive, and she didn't want to lose it by asking questions that might push him away, that might reveal she was too demanding or too suspicious or too complicated to love. She convinced herself that everyone carried unseen burdens, that his shadows were simply part of what made him human, beautifully flawed and real in a way that felt authentic rather than alarming. Everyone had things they didn't talk about, chapters of their lives they'd closed and preferred to leave unexamined. Why should he be different? Yet a part of her, the part that had been hurt before and learned to watch for warning signs, wondered whether his silence was meant to protect her, to shield her from a truth that might hurt, or to protect himself, to keep her at just enough distance that he never had to fully risk being known. As days passed and deepened into weeks, Ariana realized that love often grows in the spaces between what is said and what is withheld, in the tension between revelation and concealment. Luca's shadows didn't scare her, not exactly, but they intrigued her, drew her curiosity like a flame draws a moth. shaping him into someone both comforting and impossibly enigmatic. He was a puzzle she wanted to solve, a story she wanted to read to its conclusion. She didn't know whether their connection was destiny or danger, whether she was falling into something beautiful or walking blindly toward devastation. And somewhere in the hidden folds of his story, buried beneath layers of carefully maintained composure, the truth waited for the right moment to step forward, patient but inevitable, knowing its time would come. Because every love carries a shadow, and hers was about to learn why his felt so familiar, so hauntingly recognizable, even before she knew his past, even before she understood that some connections aren't coincidence at all, but the universe's way of finishing stories that were left incomplete. Ariana hadn't planned on mentioning Luca that night. It slipped out casually during dinner, like a subtle truth that escapes her before her mind can stop it. They were having one of their routine family meals, the kind of meal that had become comfortable in its predictability, where conversation flowed easily about work, the weather, and mundane events of the day. The warmth of the room gave way to an unfamiliar chill, the cozy atmosphere evaporating so quickly it felt like a physical temperature change, as if a silent alarm had been triggered and only her parents could hear it. Some ancestral warning system activating after years of inactivity. The father asked his name again, more slowly this time, each syllable deliberate, as if confirming a threat he hoped he had misunderstood. When Ariana repeated it, "Luca," something flashed in her eyes like a lightning bolt in a dark sky. Fear, recognition, or guilt, she couldn't tell. Perhaps all three were intertwined in a reaction too complex to decipher. Her mother placed her hand on the table more forcefully than necessary, steadying herself as if the world had tilted slightly beneath her feet. No one spoke for several seconds, 5, 10, maybe 15, but the silence was more deafening than any question Ariana could ask. She felt her stomach clench with discomfort, a knot forming that had nothing to do with the food she had eaten, and everything to do with the sudden and terrible realization that something was very, very wrong. Finally, her mother cleared her throat, a sound that seemed to require effort, as if the words that followed were being forcibly extracted, and told Ariana she should keep her distance. No explanation, no discussion, just an order disguised as concern, uttered with a firmness that left no room for negotiation. The dismissal seemed harsh and strangely urgent. Ariana pressed for a reason, but both parents dodged the question with a rehearsed vagueness that suggested they had been preparing for this conversation for a long time. "It's complicated," said her father, without much conviction. "You'll understand in the future," her mother added, which wasn't an answer, but rather an insult to Ariana's intelligence. Her reactions didn't match the tranquility of her relationship with Luca. Something much older and much heavier was being awakened. A buried story resurfacing after years submerged. And in that moment, Ariana understood that her parents didn't fear Luca. They feared the truth his name carried. The conversation ended abruptly, leaving Ariana with 1,000 unanswered questions. Why was her father's voice trembling? Why did her mother pale at the mention of Luca's name? She felt as if she had entered a room filled with invisible walls, each guarding a secret her family refused to acknowledge. A labyrinth of untold stories that had shaped her life without her knowledge or consent. Whatever they were hiding, it wasn't something small or insignificant. It was something that had lived in the shadows long before she met Luca, something that had been carefully kept in the dark for years, possibly decades, waiting precisely for that moment to threaten to be revealed. Later that night, unable to sleep, Ariana replayed the dinner scene repeatedly in her mind like a film she was trying to analyze, studying every micro-expression, every pause, every carefully chosen word, and every notable omission. She realized that her parents' fear was too real to ignore, too visceral to be dismissed as mere overprotection or irrational prejudice. Their warning didn't come from intuition or parental instinct. It came from memory, a memory she had never been allowed to access, a chapter of the family history that had been deliberately hidden from her. And as she lay awake in the silence of her room, a truth became impossible to deny. The connection she felt with Luca, that immediate recognition, that sense of destiny, was not the only one that existed between them. There was another connection, older and more complex, buried beneath the surface of the present moment. Because some names don't simply belong to people, they belong to stories. And the story behind Luca's name was about to find its way back to her. If this story is resonating with you, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It helps this channel grow and brings more heart-centered stories to life. The morning after that uneasy dinner, Ariana found her mother waiting for her in the kitchen, positioned by the window where the early light filtered through sheer curtains, creating shadows that seemed to match the worry etched across her face. A worried expression hid behind a forced smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes and only made the anxiety more obvious by attempting to conceal it. She didn't mention the tension from the night before, didn't acknowledge the abrupt ending or the questions left hanging in the air, but the silence between them was filled with unspoken fear, thick and tangible, like humidity before a storm. Her mother poured coffee with trembling hands, the stream of dark liquid wavering slightly as the pot shook, avoiding Ariana's eyes as if direct contact would break whatever fragile control she'd managed to construct overnight. The ceramic cup rattled faintly against the saucer as she set it down. Finally, after minutes that felt like hours of this tense domestic theater, she whispered the warning again, her voice barely audible above the morning sounds of the house. "Stay away from him." No explanation followed, only a trembling insistence that felt heavier than any truth spoken aloud, weighted with desperation and something that looked uncomfortably like grief. Ariana pressed for answers, her frustration from the previous night returning with renewed intensity, her voice rising despite her efforts to remain calm. "Why? Just tell me why. I deserve to know." But her mother simply shook her head, a small repeated motion that might have been refusal or helplessness or both, as if some invisible force kept her from speaking. Some ancient promise or threat that sealed her lips even against her daughter's pleas. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears that she refused to let fall. That silence hurt more than any confession would have, more than any terrible truth could possibly wound, because it left Ariana completely in the dark, fumbling without guidance through something that clearly mattered desperately. It wasn't concern for Ariana's heart or her future. She could tell the difference now, could read the nuances in her mother's expression. It was fear of the past, of old ghosts being disturbed, of consequences that had apparently been avoided for years through careful distance and deliberate forgetting. Her father stepped into the room, drawn perhaps by the sound of their voices or simply by his morning routine, but froze in the doorway when he realized what they were discussing. His body went rigid, his eyes darting between his wife and daughter. He didn't repeat the warning. His silence agreed with it, adding his weight to the wall being built between Ariana and the answers she needed. Something about Luca terrified them in a way that went beyond normal parental protectiveness, beyond rational concern. And Ariana felt the weight of a secret closing in around her like walls narrowing, limiting her space to breathe and move freely. But what scared her most, what unsettled her more than their fear itself, was that their fear didn't match the man she knew. Luca was gentle, steady, and kind in ways few people had ever been with her, patient with her anxieties, attentive to her needs, generous with his time and presence. Nothing about him resembled danger or threat or darkness. His worst quality was perhaps that he kept too much to himself, but even that felt like protection rather than deception. And yet, her parents' reaction came from a wound, not imagination, not paranoia or prejudice. She could see the genuine terror in their eyes, the authentic trauma that his name had triggered. Ariana stood there in her childhood kitchen, surrounded by familiar objects that suddenly felt foreign, torn between the truth she felt when she was with Luca and the truth they hid from her with such desperate intensity. She realized with a clarity that felt like ice water through her veins that she had to discover who Luca really was. Not just the man she'd been falling for, but the complete person with whatever history attached to his name, and why that name shook her family to its foundations. Because if the past wasn't finished with them, if it had unfinished business that connected her family to his in ways she couldn't yet see, it was about to pull her in whether she was ready or not. Later that afternoon, after a morning spent in suffocating tension with her parents who moved around her like she was fragile or contaminated, Ariana walked alone through the city, needing movement and air and distance from the claustrophobic weight of home. She replayed every moment she had shared with Luca, examining them now through a different lens, searching for clues she might have missed. warning signs she'd been too enchanted to notice. The first meeting at the cafe window. The careful way he listened. The shadows that crossed his face at certain moments. She didn't believe her parents' warnings, or rather, she didn't want to believe them. Didn't want the beautiful thing growing between her and Luca to be poisoned by some history she'd had no part in creating. But she couldn't ignore the shadow they cast over her heart. Couldn't pretend she hadn't seen genuine fear in her mother's eyes or heard the tremor in her father's voice. Questions echoed inside her, unsettling but necessary, each one demanding attention she'd previously denied. Why had Luca flinched, that barely perceptible tensing of his body, when she mentioned her family weeks before? Why had he never shared anything substantive about his past? Deflecting personal questions with such skill she'd barely noticed she was learning nothing about where he came from. Why did his silence, which had seemed like gentle reserve, suddenly feel like a door? She wasn't sure she wanted to open, behind which something might be waiting that would change everything. By the time she reached the cafe where they first met, that sacred space where her life had pivoted on a single glance, Ariana understood one thing clearly. The truth wasn't going to reveal itself unless she searched for it, unless she asked the questions she'd been too careful or too afraid to ask before. Whether Luca was part of her past in ways she didn't remember or simply meant to be part of her future, she needed to know the story behind his name, needed to understand what connected him to her family in a way that inspired such visceral fear. She stood outside, watching people move inside the warm lit space, and took a deep breath, steadying herself for whatever answers waited for her, preparing to risk the beautiful, fragile thing they'd built for the sake of truth. Because love may open a heart, may make it vulnerable and receptive in ways nothing else can. But truth is what decides whether it breaks or heals, whether it grows or withers, whether it survives or becomes just another cautionary tale about things left unspoken until it was too late. And as Ariana prepared to face the shadows ahead, she had no idea that the next answers would come not from Luca, but from the ghosts her family had tried to bury.